This episode contains spoilers for Bioshock Infinite and Burial at Sea. Welcome back to the Push to Smart Water Cooler. This time we will be discussing Burial at Sea, the recent two-part DLC pack for Bioshock Infinite. If you've seen our previous episodes, you know that we had a lot of problems with Bioshock Infinite, but ultimately our love for Rapture won out and we continued to follow the adventures of Elizabeth and Booker. This time in the objectivist utopia under the sea.
What happened during the first episode of Burial at Sea? That is a very good question. What did happen? Okay, so you're trying to find a girl. The girl is maybe your daughter. You get to dance with your also other maybe daughter. You get electrocuted. You go to an abandoned place. And then you kind of find your other daughter after a big daddy. And it's very confusing. So.
Yeah. That is a good summary.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea. I was kind of excited, cautiously optimistic to play. I love Rapture. I love the first game. I love Bioshock 2, even though we like to pretend it doesn't exist. And I was really excited to kind of see them back off from Columbia and all the racist baggage that comes with it and go back to what they knew. And it turns out they don't know it very well. Rapture just felt really weirdly dead, even though we finally get to see it in its glory days right before everything goes crazy. It was just really strange to play. What were your thoughts?
I actually have to disagree with you. I actually thought that the pre-crisis Rapture was actually really cool. Overhearing all the conversations, just as you walk by, everybody's just kind of laid back. But at the same time, it felt like everybody's conversation, there'd be a bit more variety.
Yeah.
In the conversations in real life, instead of just being about, the same thing.
Which I understand that their desire to do that because this is literally right before the revolution happens and everything just breaks apart. So it's on everybody's mind. But at the same time, there are other ways to approach it without everyone sounding like a political mouthpiece. So I made in my notes for this, Mass Effect 3 does a really good job with ambient dialogue because the war is on everybody's minds, but everybody has something different to say about it depending on who they are or where they come from. So you'll have the military discussion, but then you'll also have merchants talking about their concern over trade routes. You'll have the families that are trying to figure out how to relocate their children out of danger. Whereas everything in Rapture was just what do you think about this Fontaine fellow? And it was just, just didn't feel like a real world. Mm-hmm. The one thing I thought that really worked in kind of the world building was when you walk into that bar and there's the waiter that is using the Houdini splicers from the first game's ability to teleport from table to table and to come and greet you. It was okay, this is how the technology existed and was justified before everyone turned into monsters. Mm-hmm. And it was just such a great moment to kind of see it at work. And it was that is what I wanted out of Burial at Sea. I wanted to see what Rapture was like, how these things functioned in a relatively, functional society before it all just went to crap.
It was really cool to see the splicers out of a different context than just, crazed, wrench-bearing, shoot 'em all. Another thing I really liked was right outside the club, all the creepy rabbit-faced guys on the pedestal. That was probably one of my favorite parts. My least favorite part was probably everything else. Okay, I actually really did. I have a soft spot for femme fatale, and Elizabeth as a femme fatale I thought was very cool. Even if she fell into several of the tropes that come along with that character type.
Which was weird, especially because the detective is her dad.
Yeah.
You're oh, where is this going? This is kind of creepy. Yeah.
Exactly. But the story it didn't make much sense. It was very vague. But then they tried explaining it, and it made zero sense.
Yeah. There was a weird exposition dump at the very end that you're right. Just it didn't make any sense. You could tell they were trying to set up the next episode and kind of bring you up to speed, but instead it just made it much more confusing and that much less enjoyable.
Yeah, and I know that when I finished it, you had already finished it, and I had no clue what it all meant. But you had actually a pretty great theory for what it could mean. I don't think it'll save how incoherent it was, but let's talk about that theory of yours.
Okay, my theory is that this is Elizabeth kind of going through the timelines to clean up loose ends. So, like, in the original Bioshock Infinite, the big reveal at the end, of course, is that Comstock and Book are the same person, and the only way to prevent all the Comstocks and all the possible timelines from coming to power and abusing everybody is to kill Booker. And so the big reveal at the end of the DLC is that the Booker you're playing as is actually Comstock, which is first kind of but so the way I think it's going to try to justify it is that because we see the Anna in this timeline possibly died because her head was coming through the wall instead of her finger to be severed, that this created some kind of weird hiccup in the timeline where Comstock is allowed to live. So Elizabeth is coming to this timeline to kind of, like I said, tie up those loose ends and kill this Comstock. So there are literally no Comstocks left.
So in this one, because Anna died, there wasn't like an Elizabeth who grew up and later killed Comstock. And so other Elizabeth from a different timeline is coming to just kill this Comstock.
That is a much more succinct way to say it. I think so. Yes. Two of the images in the sequence I absolutely loved. Like the image of the daughter's head kind of slow motion coming through the wall. My toes curled.
I know, it was so uncomfortable.
Oh my God. And then I loved the callback to the very first launch trailer for Bioshock with the drill coming through Comstock's chest in the first person.
Yeah. Yes.
I really liked that kind of, nod to the original. Didn't justify everything that happened, but it did tickle me.
In conclusion, we were tickled but not impressed. I think that does it for our water cooler discussion, actually. I believe our next water cooler discussion is going to be about The Walking Dead Season 2, Episode 1, but our next full episode is going to be very exciting, and it's going to be our Game of the Year thoughts, disappointments, picks, so look forward to that. And, of course, if you enjoyed the DLC anymore, or if you have thoughts about where it's going or what happened, please let us know and discuss it in the comment section of the video below.
Thanks. You want to thank me? Next time try ducking.